In early April 2026, Ontario quietly adjusted the pricing terms on electricity exported to the United States. No press conference, no formal announcement, no headlines about retaliation, just a technical update buried inside a utility contract. And within days, grid operators across New York, Michigan, and Minnesota were running new cost projections. Here is what makes this moment different from every tariff dispute that came before it. When Washington imposed 25% tariffs on Canadian steel, Canada could retaliate with equivalent tariffs on American goods. The pressure was symmetrical. Both sides had leverage. Both sides could negotiate. Electricity does not work that way. Ontario alone exports roughly 20 terawatt hours of electricity to the United States every year. That is enough to power approximately 1.8 million American homes continuously. The northeastern states, the Great Lakes Industrial Corridor, and parts of the Mid-Atlantic grid have spent decades integrating that supply into their baseline planning. You cannot replace 20 terawatt hours of stable, dispatchable hydroelectric power with a phone call or a policy announcement. That asymmetry is the entire story. Washington can escalate tariffs. Canada can escalate pricing. But only one side wakes up the next morning with a grid that still needs to function. So the question this raises is simple and uncomfortable. Who actually holds leverage here? To understand why this matters, you need to understand how North American electricity actually moves, because most people do not. The eastern United States and Canada do not operate separate electricity systems. They operate one interconnected grid called the Eastern Interconnection. This is a shared network spanning from Manitoba to Florida, from Saskatchewan to the Atlantic coast. Power flows across this network in real time, constantly balancing supply and demand across state and provincial lines. The border, for electricity purposes, barely exists. Within that system, Canadian hydroelectric generation plays a specific and irreplaceable role. It provides what grid engineers call firm baseload power. Electricity that is on, constant, and dispatchable 24 hours a day, regardless of weather, season, or time of day. Solar panels stop working at night. Wind turbines stop when the air is still. Hydroelectric dams do not stop. Hydro-Quebec alone operates over 37,000 megawatts of installed capacity. Manitoba Hydro supplies power deep into Minnesota and the Dakotas. Ontario's transmission corridors feed directly into New York and Michigan. These are not abstract trade relationships. They are physical cables, transformers, and switching stations built over 50 years of continental energy cooperation. Rewiring them is not a policy decision. It is a decade-long engineering project. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has been one of the loudest voices in Canada's trade war response, and electricity is his sharpest tool. Ford threatened earlier in this dispute to cut electricity exports to New York, Michigan, and Minnesota, states that collectively receive the equivalent of power for roughly 1.5 million American homes from Ontario's grid alone. He called it a last resort. He made sure Washington heard the word last and not the word resort. The April 2026 pricing adjustment was subtler than a cutoff. It targeted peak demand hours, winter heating season, summer cooling spikes, the moments when American utilities need Canadian power most and alternatives are least available. A modest increase during those windows is not a modest increase in total cost. It compounds directly into utility bills and manufacturing operating costs across the Great Lakes region. Hydro-Quebec is not a footnote in this story. It is one of the largest electricity producers in North America, with over 37,000 megawatts of capacity. The utility holds long-term export contracts reaching deep into New England and New York. Quebec Premier François Legault has been measured in his public statements throughout the trade war, but Hydro-Quebec's pricing structure gives Quebec a form of leverage that requires no press conference to exercise. When contract renewal terms are revised upward, the impact is automatic, contractual, and immediate. New England ratepayers feel it in their monthly bills before any political statement is issued. Manitoba Hydro operates a less visible but equally strategic corridor into the American Midwest. Minnesota, North Dakota, and Wisconsin receive significant portions of their baseload supply through Manitoba's transmission lines. These are states with substantial agricultural and industrial sectors, manufacturing operations. food processing facilities, mining infrastructure, all of which carry electricity as a core input cost. When Manitoba's export pricing shifts, it does not hit financial markets first. It hits a soybean processing plant in Duluth or a steel fabricator in Green Bay. The electricity increase does not arrive labeled as a trade war measure. It arrives labeled as a market adjustment, but the pressure is identical. One sector that rarely appears in trade war coverage but absorbs this pressure directly is digital infrastructure. Data centers are among the most electricity-intensive facilities ever built. A large hyperscale data center can consume 100 megawatts or more continuously. Several of the largest concentrations of this infrastructure in the United States sit in regions directly supplied by Canadian electricity corridors. Microsoft, Amazon Web Services, and Google have all expanded data center capacity in the Northeastern and Great Lakes regions over the past 5 years. When that power becomes more expensive, it enters the cost modeling of future infrastructure decisions. And those decisions about where to build the next facility carry consequences for regional employment and long-term economic competitiveness that extend well beyond any single utility bill. Let's take a quick pause. If you found this analysis useful, hitting the like button helps us reach a broader audience. And your thoughts in the comments make an even bigger impact. Thank you for watching. Now let's dive back in. Here is what actually happened in April 2026. Canada adjusted the pricing terms on hydroelectric exports to the United States at the peak of an already strained trade war. The adjustment was applied through existing contractual mechanisms, peak pricing clauses, capacity assurance fees, per megawatt hour rate revisions, all of which are legally available under existing agreements. No new legislation was required. No formal retaliation was declared. This is where the trade war changes character. For 2 years, the public framework of the United States and Canada dispute has been built around tariffs. Who imposes them, who retaliates, and who blinks first? Tariffs operate in a world of relative symmetry. Both sides can raise them. Both sides can lower them. The WTO provides a dispute mechanism. The USMCA provides a consultation framework. There are rules, timelines, and off-ramps. Electricity pricing carries none of those constraints. It is not governed by trade panels. It does not require congressional authorization. It does not appear on a list of retaliatory measures subject to international review. It moves through contracts and grid operations, and its effects reach American households before any policy response can even be formulated. What this signals is that Canada has shifted from reactive retaliation to structural leverage. That is a fundamentally different posture. The trigger to watch is not the next round of tariff announcements. It is the electricity price data published by regional grid operators in the northeastern United States over the next 2 quarters. If wholesale electricity prices in New York and New England rise measurably above seasonal norms, it will confirm that the pricing adjustment has passed through the system and into the retail tier. At that point, the trade war becomes visible in a place where politics cannot easily contain it: the monthly utility bill of an American household. This is not the first time energy has entered a North American trade dispute, but it is the first time it has done so this deliberately. In 1988, during the original Canada and United States Free Trade Agreement negotiations, energy security was one of the most contested provisions. Canada agreed to proportionality clauses that effectively guaranteed the United States a share of Canadian energy exports, even during domestic shortages. Canadian critics called it a surrender of sovereignty. The clause has governed energy trade ever since, and it has constrained Canada's ability to use energy as leverage until now. The current trade war has pushed Canada to explore the boundaries of what those clauses actually permit. Pricing adjustments within existing contracts do not violate proportionality rules. They are commercially legitimate, but their strategic timing in the context of escalating tariffs makes their intent unmistakable. This time, Canada is not conceding the energy dimension. It is using it. The legal framework here is deliberately quiet, and that is the point. The USMCA governs goods, intellectual property, and investment. It does not set electricity prices. Canada's pricing adjustments, structured as contract revisions rather than government-imposed export restrictions, sit in a legal space that the United States cannot easily challenge through formal trade mechanisms. A utility contract revision cannot be defined, categorized, or disputed at a trade panel the way a tariff can. Washington could raise the issue diplomatically, but there is no clear formal lever to pull. For years, the debate about Canada and United States trade has focused on what crosses the border in containers: steel, aluminum, vehicles, agricultural goods. This episode forces a different question onto the table. What about what flows through cables buried underground, invisible to customs declarations and trade data, powering the factories, homes, and data centers that the American economy depends on every single hour? Canada did not announce a new weapon. It revealed one that was always there. The question for Washington is not whether to respond. It is whether the infrastructure exists to respond effectively, and on what timeline. That answer will not come from a speech. It will come from the next electricity bill. What do you think? Is Energy Canada's strongest card in this trade war? Let us know in the comments below. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. We sincerely appreciate you joining us today. If our content resonated with you or sparked inspiration, please consider expressing your support by liking it and subscribing to stay connected with our community. Your support holds immense value for us.